Why were the youth so involved during the recent looting of foreign-owned businesses? Does the NYDA fulfill its mandate of empowering the youth? Why do political formations focus so much on politics than addressing the plight of young people? And do young people have enough role models who can keep moral regeneration alive? What time is it? It's question time. Welcome to the show. My name is Mpho Tsedu. Unemployment continues to pose a serious challenge to South African authorities, with reports indicating that the recent looting of foreign-owned businesses was predominantly done by young people. Meanwhile, the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Report for 2014-2015 shows that South Africa lags behind on a number of indicators essential for robust economic growth and the creation of better job opportunities. But are parents executing their role of inculcating moral values and Ubuntu among young people? My guest today, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Youth Development Agency, NYDA, Katura Mkumba. Luzuko Buku is the Secretary General of the South African Student Congress, and Date Seth Mazibuko from the Moral Regeneration Movement. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Young people were at the forefront looting, Katu. How do you feel? You're supposed to be one of those organizations that, embrace the development of young people and actually spearhead the agenda of youth development. Yet, we see them developing on other spheres.
No, of course, we were quite saddened to see the situation. Obviously, we would prefer that young people must either be at school learning or they must be involved actively in the economy of our country. And as an institution, we're committed to that cause, but it is a fact that not one single institution can ever do enough to address the plight of young people. It is an issue that requires all of us as a country, public sector, private sector, even the civil society to join hands to build a better country.
So, did you feel somehow that you are lacking in terms of your role, or your mandate, in as far as youth development is concerned, whereby when you're seeing young people involved in those things instead of things that you have identified?
No, not necessarily. I think, we have to understand the context in which young people are finding themselves in, which cannot necessarily be located within whether the NYDA is succeeding or not as an institution faced with youth development. You would note that, the young people in the main who would have been in the forefront of that would be, young people who I would like to call the lost generation. We know from, statistics and information before us, research tells us that, about 1.2 million young people enrolled in grade 1, only about 500,000 actually sit to write the matric exam, which means that close to 800,000, 100,000 of young people are getting lost somewhere in the system. Now, that problem, cuts across. It speaks to issues of, social issues. It speaks to issues of how these young people are better prepared to be able to participate in the social economy of our country. So that question is quite broad. It's not necessarily an area of the NYDA. As I say, as the institution charged with youth development, we are quite concerned. We would like and would prefer to have those young people active in the economy of the country. As I say, we have a variety of programs that we offer as the NYDA that are targeting skills development amongst young people, that are also providing opportunity for young people to be reintegrated into the schooling system, also involvement in the economy of the country. But like I said, in a country where the majority of the population are young people, a single institution will never cut it. It requires all of us to address what we saw in the recent past.
As SASCO, obviously, you're operating at institutions of higher learning, but is the education system producing marketable skills and expertise to a point where those young people would have not been there, at those hotspot areas?
I think that will be starting it at the end. I think in the beginning the challenge is our education system capable to absorb the numbers of young people who are in demand of education, higher and both further education.
Yeah.
Now that is the challenge that we are currently having, because as it stands, our government opened in universities about 200 spaces, when in actual fact about 200,000 spaces, when in actual fact about 317,000 students passed matric and got a bachelor's entrance, and that is beyond that is below the number of people who could not be taken by the institutions the previous years. Now you get many of those students. Now this does not account to those who actually did not get the bachelor's or diploma entrance to universities. Many of them join the ranks of the unemployed, adding to the number of what is called the lost generations that Mr. Katu was speaking of. Now, the reality of the matter is that our institutions have not been expanded enough to cater for the demand of education in the country. Now, of course, most of people who go through the higher education process do get the necessary skills to participate in the labor market, but there still remains a challenge of unemployed graduates, which are due to the fact that our economy is not expanded and industrialized enough to absorb many of those young people who come from matric and from higher education institutions.
It is highly possible that some of those young people that we saw on televisions and newspapers and speaking on radio are perhaps products of SASCO, actually. They have graduated from various institutions and are just lingering around in the townships.
We can't say product of SASCO, but it is possible that they are
the alumni,
products of the higher education system, either by being rejected by the system or going through the system and then being unemployed at the end. But that will be a minimal number of those people in the main. But of course, many of them would have been, because I'm told the higher education system in South Africa, out of the population of 18 to 24, 18 years to 24 years, is educating about 16% of them. It's only 16% of them who are able to get in and finish their qualification in record time. Okay. So it is possible higher education system, not necessarily members, because we recruit members from people who are in the higher education system, and we inculcate politics that would have made them not to do such Afrophobic attacks.
Okay. Dr. Mazuko, what is wrong with black people?
Let me just start there. I just want to take up the two gentlemen at one point. You know, in 1976, I was 16 when I went to jail. I was called a lost generation. In democracy, we still call people lost. It then gets into something wrong with our democracy, because we're still doing exactly what apartheid did. So some of this terminology, some of these were, I don't think that the young people that we saw looting were actually lost generation. That was an outcry of young, not only young people, but of communities and of society, saying there is something we're lacking. And the nearest that is there was that shop owner, that corner and that corner that I find foreign than me. Black people, we lost it, not lost generation. We only lost it in having to remove in our communities respect, Ubuntu, and imposed in our communities that a person is defined by the way you dress, you drink, you drive. We left a gap come 1994. Most of us leaders who were supposed to be building our young people, we rushed to become MPs. We rushed to become BEEs. And then we dressed, we drove, we drank.
No, but it can't be all of them. I mean, the National Assembly only takes 400 people.
I'm not saying only that BEE doesn't, it's not National Assembly.
Yeah.
BEE is another assembly. What you see we even fought even in the very BEE. We became a materialistic society. If you look at this, these young people are crying for, you just said it. They want some small businesses also, so that NYDA must move into that space. And NYDA is trying to move into that space, and they're finding it difficult because of the numbers of young people that are moving into that space. He is crying out, the education system of this country cannot accommodate even those that want to be. What examples as leaders in this country are we setting to be able to say, young people, you are not lost, but to still have us as your leaders that can give you, we talk about values, can give you ethical practices. Even the way we do our business is so unethical, is so less value-driven that we end up transferring this even to our young ones.
The Progressive Youth Alliance, don't you think as political structures you are failing somehow to inculcate the spirit of responsibility amongst your potential members? To a point where they would really, say what we are doing is not supposed to be done.
Firstly, let me make a correction. I did not say, I did not refer to a lost generation.
Okay.
I referred to a lost generation that he was referring to.
I was going to be
that he was referring to.
friendly with you.
But to,
let me put this. I'm going to give you time to respond to that question. I just want us to take a quick break, though. I'm sorry about that. This is question time. Please don't go away.
Zoom into Africa. This is Ghana. The president is Mr. John Dramani Mahama. Ghana got independent from the United Kingdom on 6 March in 1957. The population is more than 25 million people. One of Ghana's major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is cedi.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today is the CEO of NYDA, Katura Mkumba. Luzgo Buku is the Secretary General of SASCO, and Seth Masbugo is the Chief Operating Officer of Moral Regeneration Movement, SASCO, or the PYA also. Just answer for both movements.
No, I must say, the main challenge is with our basic education system in terms of inculcating the necessary history and politics in our youth. For instance, our history in the country is too simplistic, and it does not necessarily go beyond in addressing the question of the location of South Africa in the continent as a whole. It promotes values of South African exceptionalism. So that is what we do, that is what we try to fight against as SASCO. When people get into the higher education terrain, try to inculcate the necessary politics for them to understand the African struggle and the international
for them to stop,
struggle.
Or
now,
rather, finding South Africans, saying whenever they go across Limpopo to Zimbabwe to say we're going to Africa.
We're going to Africa, for instance, putting South Africa as some exceptional country and so on. So that is what we do. But what we must say is that we have not been able as a country. Now, this is beyond youth politics. to deal with some economic questions that are critical for survival of people in our townships. Now, as a result, our people are quick whenever they see situations. They are quick to put blame and create sacrificial lambs out of certain individuals and groupings in society. For instance, ward councillors, they always get their houses burned because of electricity outages of ESCOM and water cuts of the municipalities and so on and so forth. So what we ought to do as a country, we ought to inculcate the necessary politics in our people, but that should be coupled with changing the lives of our people economically now, creating the jobs through industrialization that will come with beneficiation.
Katu, what would you have done to those young people who were looting as the NYDA?
Look, the biggest intervention that the NYDA can do to those young people is to firstly understand their circumstances where they are, because the needs of young people will differ. You'll find that in that group of young people who were leading or who were participating in the looting process, there are some of them who should be at school. But for one reason or the other, they're not at school. So our intervention should be those who should be at school must be at school. Those who should be, finding employment, we should be assisting them to better prepare them to find employment. And those with aspirations of going into the, entrepreneurship space, we must be providing them with the tools and the support for them to be able to enter that space.
Let's start with those who would love to be at school.
Yeah. Look, those who would love to be at school, ours is to encourage them to go back to school. We work very closely with basic education in making sure that, we support young people going back to school. We work with other youth formations like, every year at the beginning of the year, we run programs such as Start Year Campaign, which are aimed at encouraging young people to go back to school. We are providing additional information like on career guidance, on courses that those who are at school must take. Now that we have a national development plan, which basically is giving us a blueprint of where we're going to 2030, to say that these are the typical career choices that you should be following in making sure that you get qualifications that will enable you to be absorbed by the economy. For those who are saying that should be assisted with further skilling, is that it's a question of saying, how can you be assisted to be able to get somewhere in life without necessarily sending you back to school? As I've said, we have programs that are aimed at skills development. We say we can take you to, teach you to be a plumber, a welder, so that you can find something to do with your life, which is economically active.
Entrepreneurship, because that's where a lot of people are interested in, young people are interested in. They don't want to work for anybody, they want to be self-employed. How do you assist them?
Look, we assist them in two folds. One, directly we give young people grant. The grant is intended to assist young people who are mostly first-time entrepreneurs, those young people who want to try out entrepreneurship, where we give a grant of up to 100,000. I'll try to shorten, the program in the interest of time. The grant works in such a way that if a young person says, I want to go into, I want to try business of internet cafe, we'll ask them to give us quotation of their requirements. We'll pay the suppliers so that we get them the equipment, so we don't give them cash, but we also give them that additional support that they require, mentorship, market linkages, and so forth and so forth. But from those young people, or for those young people who want to go into entrepreneurship in a big way, or those who at least have established or found themselves to be entrepreneurs, we have entered into a tripartite agreement with the Small Enterprise Finance Agency and the Industrial Development Corporation, where we give loans up to 50 million rand. So a young person who require any loan financing of up to 5 million rand will assist that young person with the loan through SAFA. A young person who require funding for up to 50 million will assist that young person through IDC.
Are you not only funding ANC Youth League card-carrying members here?
Definitely not. In fact, upon resuming office as the CEO, one of the things that I've committed to do, which I am doing, is that on a quarterly basis, we print or we list all beneficiaries from the NYDA products and service offerings for the public to see, so that they know that every young person, depending on what political affiliation they are, what race or which corner of the country they come from, are able to find assistance from the NYDA.
And there's something that I really find discouraging. When you talk small business or small medium, young people seem to think that you're talking spaza shops, and you always hear people say, and it's so unfortunate when it comes to people living with disabilities. You only consider them for sewing, for baking, all those smaller nyana businesses, if one may say so.
Look, I mean, that's one thing that for us as the NYDA, it's a revolution that we're pursuing to change the mindsets. Also, but it must be, driven within the broader context of the economic trajectory that we're taking as a country. He was talking about industrialists. That's where we need to go. We need to create black industrialists, and that's the message that we're preaching to young people out there.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, I want to talk to Tate Mazibuko. This question time. Please don't go away.
Diwani has pleaded not guilty to murdering his wife. In November 2010, Diwani's murder trial finally got underway. It's taken South African authorities more than 3 years to get him into the dock.
Not guilty of robbing, kidnapping and murdering his wife. This is how Shri Diwani pleaded before Deputy Cape Judge President Jeanette Traverso.
Why did these two men need even a gun to scare a little girl like that? Those are the questions that runs around our head.
Your World, weekdays at 9 p.m.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today, NYDA CEO Katura Mkumba. Luzuko Buku is the Secretary General of SASCO, and that is Seth Mazibuko, Chief Operating Officer, Moral Regeneration Movement. From the Moral Regeneration Movement, I'm happy that I have you here. You were a youth activist. Look at what is happening today and what happened with you in 76, and tell me how South Africa is going to be saved.
Well, let me start by having to say, as Moral Regeneration Movement, actually, we have just identified out of research that we've done that there's an area in South Africa where we might have not, issues that we might have not straightened up. Mm-hmm. When we came out of apartheid, immoral as apartheid was, we moved with those immoral activities of apartheid, transferred them into a democratic South Africa, in transition and right into a democratic
Give me
South
examples.
Africa. In 1976, I usually say I was a stone thrower. And now, in the liberated South Africa, I'm a stone gatherer for reconstruction and development of this country. But there are still a lot of, if we look at, he was just mentioning how our boycotts and our protests turned out to be violent.
Yeah.
People still believe in throwing stones. Actually, they're throwing stones to democracy now, not to apartheid. I threw stones against apartheid, an immoral society. The point that where we missed out, we are saying people in South Africa are still very angry, still very bitter. And we need a CODESA. And that is what we're working on now.
Another one.
A CODESA to do away not with peace and reconciliation,
yes,
but to even touch on issues of foreign nationals. We are becoming sensitive when we talk about those things and become this thing and say, there's a language now lately. Immediately when something happens in Soweto, like what has happened, is xenophobia, is criminalism. We don't get into what are the ethical, what are the what are the value-driven issues that are actually underlying, that result into that xenophobia, that result into that thuggery? We seem to be wanting to paste it over. You know, I was listening to one person, interviewed by SABC for that matter, who said, here are the officials coming to tell us that now we must learn something from these foreign businesses. What is it to learn from them, because some of their businesses are so illegal? Are they trying to make us to be so illegal? Some of these people are making babies in those plaza shops. Should we make babies? Some of these people are running these businesses without proper business papers. But when we, as these young people, are supposed to run, we're expected to do all those things. So there are these things that we've got to talk about. We've got to really deal with. Why, when our people have to say, we don't want this paper, they have to fight? They have to throw stones. They have to burn things down. We're dealing here with angry people. Look at kids in a school. They will go and do the case that is on now. I don't want to, it's just not, it's sad that people can go and sodomize a young black child, you know, in a school environment where you're supposed to be safe. What is it with us as South Africans? You know, at MRM now, Moral Regeneration Movement, we are also looking at a program called, you know, values-driven leadership. Because we say sometimes when it is rotten in the head, the tail is bound to be rotten also. I know where you're getting to.
Okay, get there yourself then.
And when I am saying something is rotten in the head, and most of the time people think of political leaders, we have businesses that are running unethically, without good values. We've got we've got people in the leadership, in the churches, who are doing worse things. Today, this country is having a very serious problem of having to go and pick up corpses, you know, from that were sort of even undescribable from Nigeria. It is our own people that left the country and went there and made it our government's responsibility to bring them back. TB Joshua.
Yes,
TB Joshua. Who is he? How many churches are mushrooming in our townships now lately? Tell me, how many tents? Where we're supposed to be building houses, we have tents. Where we're supposed to be building schools, we have...
Shacks.
Not even shacks, mosques now lately.
Oh, okay.
Be careful. And we are sitting here, this is what I'm trying to say, with a situation where we are not facing, you know, the real problem. Hence, I'm going back to my point. The point that says we need to, the way we sit down to correct apartheid, we can sit down and correct this environment that we're in now.
How are you going to contribute to that type of a movement as SASCO, to correct the minds of young people?
We just talked when he came here. He said, please, can you come and join MRM Youth Chapter?
No, for sure, beyond having structures of the moral regeneration movement, it is our duty as members of the organization and beyond to behave in a morally proper way. And that is what we actually educate our members to do. But for me, it goes back to the question of the structure of our economy. The fact that our economy benefits a few and the majority is left to be in squalor is in itself a recipe for a moral degeneration in our society and in our value system, because you have a few who can eat so much and many who can eat close to nothing.
Okay. Mr. Ramgumba, as I close, talking moral regeneration here, the Kissing Festival, I know it was a couple of years back.
10 years ago, maybe?
As the NYDA, are you going to fund that type of a generation?
We'll fund a moral regeneration program.
We'll fund a moral regeneration program. No, but I think, honestly speaking, of course, for us as an NYDA, we believe that before you can even talk about an educated person who can give back to the economy, or a successful entrepreneur who can give back to the economy, morality is the basis.
Okay.
And we believe that a lot more must be done, starting from the household, parents, schools, churches, and so forth.
Okay. Gentlemen, let me thank you for the time. Unfortunately, we have indeed ran out of it, but I hope we'll get some more time in the future and talk about this matter. That was Question Time for today. A big thank you to you and to my guests as well. Welcome your feedback. Question Time at sabc.co.za. Our Twitter handle at Question Time 24, or you can also follow me on Twitter at Mpho Tsedu. From me and the crew, have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.